In June of 2021, just before 2 in the morning, a 12-story condo tower in Surfside, Florida, simply fell down. 98 people were asleep inside. Almost none of them got out. It was one of the worst building collapses in American history, and when the investigators dug through the rubble and the records, they found something that should chill anyone who owns a home in this state. The building had needed major structural repairs for years, and the owners had voted over and over to skip them, to keep their fees low, to deal with it later. Later arrived at 2 in the morning. I am starting here with something heavy, because that single night quietly rewrote the rules for hundreds of thousands of Florida homeowners, and it set off a chain of events that is, right now, pushing longtime residents, a lot of them retirees, to sell their homes and leave the state altogether. And here's the strange part. The thing forcing them out is almost never the thing you would expect. It is not the heat. It is not even, mostly, the hurricanes. It is a set of costs that stay completely invisible right up until the moment they land on your kitchen table. So let me be careful immediately, because the internet loves to scream that Florida is collapsing, and that is simply not true. There is no one Florida. Down in Miami and Palm Beach, prices are steady. Some are still climbing. What is actually happening is more specific and far more useful for you to understand if you are even thinking about moving there. One whole side of this state, the Gulf Coast, along with older condos everywhere, is going through a genuine correction. Values are falling, people are being squeezed out, and it is being driven by 3 forces stacking on top of one another. This video is 12 Florida towns and areas where that squeeze is real and measurable, and every single one comes with the actual mechanism and the actual number, because fear with no evidence behind it is worthless, and this channel has never dealt in it. But you cannot understand a single town on this list until you understand the 3 forces, so let us take them one at a time. Master these, and you will see Florida more clearly than most of the people trying to sell you a house there. The first force is insurance, and it is the giant. Florida has, by a wide margin, the most expensive homeowners insurance in the entire country. The average premium across the state is now roughly $8,300 a year. Sit with that. The national average is under $3,000. So the typical Florida homeowner pays about 3 times what the rest of America pays for the very same coverage. And down on the coast, in counties like Lee and Collier and Pinellas, it gets far uglier, with single-family homes quoted anywhere from $9,000 to $18,000 a year. Now, in fairness, and I will always be fair with you, that crisis has actually begun to ease in 2026. The state passed reforms, new insurers moved in, and the big state-backed insurer just cut its rates for the first time in a decade. But easing is not the same word as affordable. Florida still has the highest premiums in America, and for a retiree on a fixed income, an $8,000 bill that reappears every single year is exactly the kind of thing that decides whether you get to stay in your own home. Keep that number close, because we are about to stack 2 more forces on top of it, and it is the stack that breaks people. The second force takes us back to that tower in Surfside, because the state's response to that tragedy is now reshaping the entire condo market. After the collapse, Florida passed a law, and honestly, it is a sensible one. Older condo buildings, the ones 3 stories and taller and 30 years or older, now have to undergo serious structural inspections, and they have to fully fund their reserves for the big repairs. No more voting to kick the problem down the road the way Champlain Towers did. Here is where it turns painful. Almost 90% of the 1.6 million condos in Florida are more than 30 years old. So when a building that skipped its reserves for decades is suddenly told to fund them all at once, that bill drops onto the owners as a special assessment, And these are not small numbers. Across the state, roughly 40% of condo owners have been hit with one of these in just the last 3 years, ranging from $50,000 to, in some buildings, over $400,000 per unit. One complex near Miami handed its owners assessments as high as $400,000 each. So picture the retiree again. You bought a modest condo years ago precisely because it was what you could afford. Now a letter tells you that you owe $100,000, maybe $200,000 you simply do not have. You try to sell, and you find that every other owner in your building got the identical letter. They are all rushing for the exit at once, and buyers cannot even get a mortgage on a building that has not passed its inspections. The result is brutal, and it is measurable. Condo prices across Florida are down about 12% from their peak, while single-family homes barely moved at all. In some cases, the unit is now worth less than the back taxes and the assessment stacked on it. One town attorney put it perfectly. The sale prices of these condos, he said, just jumped off a cliff. The third force is the quietest, and in some ways it is the one that seals the others. People stopped coming. During the pandemic, the whole country seemed to be moving to Florida, and that tidal wave of buyers shoved prices into the sky. That wave has not merely slowed. The number of people moving into Florida has fallen by more than 90% from its peak. 90%. The demand that lifted every price in this state has all but vanished. And when the buyers disappear from a market that was built entirely on endless buyers, prices have only one direction left to travel. So there is your stack. An insurance bill you can barely carry, a surprise assessment you never saw coming, and the buyer who would have rescued you deciding to stay home. Now let us go find exactly where that stack is landing hardest. And one quick note, if this is proving useful, a like genuinely helps push it to the people who need it most, which is anyone about to sign for a house in this state. That is the only reason I bring it up. We will count down from 12, and I am ordering these by how sharp the squeeze is, ending on the single clearest example in all of Florida. Number 12, Tampa. We open here because Tampa catches people off guard. It is a large, booming, successful city. And yet the Case-Shiller Index, which is the gold standard for tracking home values in America, has now logged 13 straight months of annual price declines across the Tampa area. 13 consecutive months of value slipping in one of Florida's supposed winners. No crash, no drama, just a slow, steady erosion, month after month, which happens to be exactly what the opening act of a correction looks like before anyone is willing to say the word. Number 11, Ocala. Ocala sits well inland, up in horse country, and for years it was one of those sensible, affordable places retirees fled to when the coast got too rich for their blood. But Ocala has now climbed onto the list of Florida metros posting real price declines in 2026, and it earns its place for a reason that ought to make you pause. There is no ocean here. No storm surge ever rolls into Ocala, and yet it is still being squeezed because two of our three forces, the insurance and the foreclosure pressure, do not care one bit whether you can see the water. Ocala now ranks among the worst foreclosure metros in the whole state. When even the safe inland horse town starts to buckle, you know this pressure is statewide, not some beachfront problem you can simply drive away from. Number 10, Lakeland and Winter Haven. And here is the hard proof of exactly that. Lakeland sits inland, roughly halfway between Tampa and Orlando, nowhere near the storm coast. And in early 2026, Lakeland posted the single worst foreclosure rate of any major metro in the entire United States. Not the worst in Florida, the worst in America. At one point, 1 out of every 409 homes in the Lakeland area had a foreclosure filing against it. Sit with why that is so revealing. Lakeland has no oceanfront, no surge, no gleaming condo towers waiting on assessments. So what on earth is foreclosing all those homes? It is the pure, invisible stack, stripped of any hurricane to blame it on. Insurance climbing, property taxes climbing, pandemic-era mortgage protections expiring, and the plain monthly cost of ownership finally outrunning what ordinary families can pay. Lakeland is the single clearest piece of evidence that Florida's real problem is not the weather at all. It is the cost of staying. Number 9. Jacksonville. All the way up in the northeast corner, Jacksonville is an enormous, diversified city, and it too landed among the worst foreclosure metros in the state through the first half of 2026. The same three forces, the same result. Jacksonville earns its spot because of what its location proves. Look at the map. The pressure is now showing in the Gulf Southwest, in the inland middle around Lakeland and Ocala, and up here in the Atlantic Northeast, all at the same time. When the same stress appears in every far corner of a state this enormous, it has stopped being local bad luck. It has become the system itself. Number 8. Sarasota and Bradenton. Now we swing back down to the Gulf Coast, and the corrections start to bite harder. The Sarasota and Bradenton stretch, one of the most beloved retirement corridors in the entire country, is down meaningfully from its peak. Gorgeous beaches, genuine world-class culture, and values sliding all the same. Because this is the coast, and the coast carries the complete stack. The very highest insurance, real and repeated hurricane exposure, and a great many older condos now staring down those six-figure assessments. Sarasota is where the dream of the retirement coast runs headlong into the hard new arithmetic. And lately, the arithmetic keeps winning. Number 7. Northport. A little further south sits Northport, and this one has absorbed one of the most dramatic hits in the whole state. Typical home prices in Northport recently sat about 20% below where they stood just 3 years earlier. 20%. If you bought anywhere near the pandemic peak, a full fifth of your home's value has quietly dissolved into nothing. Northport boomed as hard as anywhere when the buyers were flooding in, which is precisely why it had the furthest distance to fall the moment that flood dried up. And fall it has. Number 6. Naples and Marco Island. Naples is one of the wealthiest, most prestigious addresses in all of Florida, and even Naples has not escaped this. The Naples and Marco Island area has posted real, measurable declines, the wider metro down roughly 9% year over year at one point. Now, Naples does have a cushion the other towns can only dream of, a deep reservoir of wealthy cash buyers who never need a mortgage and never flinch at an insurance quote. So the correction here is gentler, slower, softer around the edges. But the fact that it is happening at all, in the absolute crown jewel of the Southwest coast, tells you just how wide this pressure really runs. When even Naples gives ground, nowhere on that entire coastline is truly safe. Number 5. Punta Gorda. Now we reach the sharp end of the knife. Punta Gorda in Charlotte County posted one of the very worst foreclosure rates of any metro in the entire nation in 2026, with roughly 1 in every 416 homes hit with a foreclosure filing. And Punta Gorda carries something extra, something genuinely heavy. This stretch of coast has been battered by hurricanes again and again, and here is the cruel mechanism. When a home takes serious storm damage and then becomes difficult or outright impossible to insure, its value does not simply dip, it can crater straight down. Punta Gorda is where the insurance crisis and the hurricane reality slam into each other with the most force, and those foreclosure numbers are the wreckage left lying in the street. Number 4. Lehigh Acres. Just inland from Cape Coral, you will find Lehigh Acres, where home values recently dropped about 9% in a single year. For a long time, Lehigh Acres was the affordable overflow, the place people landed when they got priced out of the coast, which means it filled up with buyers who were already stretching to make their payment work in the first place. So when the insurance and the taxes and the interest rates all climbed at once, this became one of the very first places where families simply could not hold the line. Affordable turns into a trap when affordable was already the outer edge of everything you could manage. Number 3. Fort Myers. Fort Myers, sitting right beside Cape Coral, watched typical home values fall about 12% in just 1 year. And Fort Myers carries a specific, still open wound that hangs over this whole region. This was ground zero for Hurricane Ian, the catastrophic storm that tore Southwest Florida apart. And the aftermath of that storm is still written into every insurance rate, every rebuilding estimate, and the nervousness behind the eyes of every buyer who looks at the area. Fort Myers is the plainest lesson on this list in how one single storm can reshape an entire housing market for years after the wind has died down. Number 2, St. Petersburg. Let me make this one human, because it is far too easy to let these towns dissolve into a blur of percentages. In St. Petersburg, a couple named Jennifer and RJ were forced to demolish their own home after it was struck by 2 hurricanes, Helene and Milton, which crashed into Florida's west coast less than 2 weeks apart in 2024. 2 storms, 2 weeks. 1 home, gone. That is not a statistic on a chart. That is a married couple standing in the rubble of the place they lived their lives. And it is happening up and down this coast right now. St. Petersburg represents the raw, physical risk sitting underneath every bit of the financial talk. Sometimes the water just comes, twice inside a fortnight, and no premium and no policy on earth ever makes a family whole again. And number 1, Cape Coral. Cape Coral takes the top spot because it is the single clearest picture of everything this video has been about. The Wall Street Journal flatly named it the worst housing market in America, and the numbers do not argue. Typical home values there are down more than 10% in a single year. More than half of the homes currently for sale have already had their price cut. And here is the figure that should stop any buyer stone cold. Almost 8% of homeowners in Cape Coral are now underwater, meaning they owe more on their mortgage than the home is even worth, one of the highest rates in the entire country. The Wall Street Journal followed one investor there who paid $675,000 for a house, cut the price again and again, and is now trying to unload it for under $500,000. A full $100,000 below what he paid, and he still cannot find a buyer. Why Cape Coral above everywhere else? Because it is the perfect storm of all 3 forces running at maximum. It sits on the hurricane-exposed Gulf Coast, so the insurance is punishing and the storm risk is genuine. It boomed harder than almost anywhere during the pandemic rush, so it had the very furthest to fall when the buyers evaporated. And it is built on a vast web of canals, low and open to the water, so the flood risk and the insurance nightmare are baked into the literal ground beneath it. Every force in this video, the insurance, the storms, the vanished demand, all of it converges in Cape Coral, which is exactly why it stands at number 1. Now step back and take in all 12 at once, because a single thread runs through every one of them. The danger is almost never visible when you are standing in the driveway on a flawless, sunny Florida afternoon. The sky is blue, the palms are swaying, the house is beautiful. The threat is always somewhere you cannot see it. It is in the insurance quote you have not pulled yet. It is in the condo reserve study you have not read. It is in the foreclosure filings 3 streets over that nobody mentions. It is in the simple fact that the neighbors who would have bought your home in 2022 are just not coming anymore. And I want to be completely straight with you because this part matters. This is not me telling you to never move to Florida. Millions of people live genuinely wonderful lives there, and large parts of the state, especially the wealthier South Florida markets, are holding perfectly steady. Florida still has no state income tax. The winters are still glorious, and for the right person in the right spot, it remains a real dream. What I am telling you is to walk in with your eyes wide open, because the gap between the gorgeous surface and the hard financial truth underneath it has never, ever been wider than it is at this moment. So before you buy anywhere in this state, ask the 4 questions the brochure will never answer for you. What is the real insurance quote on this exact house? not the state average, this specific house. If it is a condo, has the building passed its inspection and fully funded its reserves? And is there an assessment coming? What have prices in this precise zip code actually done over the last 2 years? And what is the true flood and hurricane history of this particular piece of ground? Ask those four in writing before you ever let yourself fall in love with the lanai. Because the people who truly thrive in Florida are not the ones who found a place with no risk. No such place exists. Not here, not anywhere. They are the ones who found out exactly what the risk was while they still had the power to walk away. If this was useful, subscribe, because next I am turning this same honest, unflinching lens on the state everyone is fleeing to instead. The one they are all convinced is the safe bet, and it is hiding problems of its own that almost nobody is talking about yet. That is where we go next.